Yeah, well, stress. You don't know stress. Nobody knows stress. Yeah, I think we all have stress. It's a wonderful, wonderful idea, stress. Ah, you think so? You want stress. Can you live without stress? Probably can't. You probably can't. As a matter of fact, I think stress is an intrinsic part of our modern life, although it seems to be much, much greater as time goes on. Yeah, you know how it is. You're to have a full-time student, and you are a full-time student. You got to work a full-time job. You got two kids at home, and you got enough. It's impossible to keep things going. Well, let's sort of talk a little bit about stress and what it is and what it comes from. And it's not just that stress kills you, which, by the way, I'm not exactly sure that it does, right? Stress might not kill you. We'll talk about that in a minute. We have to know what stress comes from. What are the different factors? Maybe if we can figure out the different places where stress comes from and how we deal with it, we can get a better hold on it and have it less as a threat to our lives. Less of a threat to our life. Stress being a threat. Maybe the threat is a stress. Or stress is a threat. Or threat is a stress. Well, we got to talk about that. Okay, so if that's being the case, we're going to talk about three things. Three stages. First, the stressors. What are stressors? In other words, things that make us stress. Then, what are the stress mediators? The type of things that we can say determine the level of stress experienced, right? And then the third thing, number three, is the stress responses. How we respond to the stress. What areas? What contingencies? What makes this? What do we call the stress response? So number one is the stressors. Stressors, causes of stress. Stressors, causes of stress. Now we can talk about four possibilities. Four. You see, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 possibilities of stressors. One is life changes, the second is catastrophic events, the third are daily hassles, and the fourth are chronic stressors. What does it mean, life changes, okay? Life changes. Well, you know life changes. Things that change in your life. In other words, going through the story of life, as you go from one stage to another stage to another stage, things are going to change, right? You're not the same person you were 2 years ago or 5 years ago. Well, what happens? Like, for instance, if you graduate from high school, you go to college, or you get a new job, or you marry a new person, or you break up with a new person, or you break up with an old. These are changes in life. Now, some of them, of course, if you get a divorce, that's a big change, right? That's a huge change. It's considered one of the top. Okay, well, it's almost something which you could say goes into the second category, which after life changes, the second category are catastrophic events. Right? A divorce might be considered a catastrophic. Well, it's not exactly the same thing as your house burning down. It's not the same thing as getting arrested and going to jail. It's not the same thing. Those things are really catastrophic events, right? If you lose your job, that might be a catastrophic event. Of course, that's a catastrophic event. That's another type of thing that happened. Of course, losing a job, we certainly hope that that's not what you would consider a daily hassle. Something happens every day. Oh, yeah, I lose a job. I lost a job. I lost a job yesterday and 2 weeks ago. I lose a job all the time. No, I hope that's not. Daily hassles are really the sort of things that happen. The train was late. I forgot. I don't know where I put my keys in the morning. I was trying to. I have to make coffee in the morning. Can't find the filters for the coffee maker. And these are hassles, right? Who needs it? These are hassles, right? They're daily hassles that happens all the time, you know? So you've got the life changes, the catastrophic events, daily hassles, and the fourth one, and the number four are chronic stressors, right? Things that are all the time there, right? All the time there. I'm not feeling, I've got an illness, right? Or I need to make enough money to pay my bills. Or I constantly get the migraine headaches. Or I like my house warm, but my wife likes it cold, so it's always too cold in the house. Chronic things that happen all the time. So let's say it's life changes, catastrophic events, daily hassles, and chronic stressors are the 4 different types of stressors. Okay. Now, once these things happen, we can and dealing with them differently by defining them differently, it will make a big difference, because let's say if you're talking about a catastrophic event, well, it's a one-time happening. Maybe so. How are you going to deal with it? Okay, if you look at the mediators, what type of mediators we'll talk about 5 different things that can affect the way you can cope or experience any one of those stressors that fall in any one of those 4 categories. Okay, number 1, cognitive appraisal. Okay, in other words, how you think about it, how you decide how important or unimportant it is. Cognitive appraisal, right? The second possibility, the second thing that you need to think about that impacts the way you are going to understand the stressor is the predictability. This happens all the time, every time, it's every single winter. I'm going to have this problem that I like it warm and she likes it cold, and we don't get the heat up enough. So it's every single, you know what, maybe I can figure it out next time. I'm going to have my own room heater and sleep in the other room. That's the way I'm going to deal with it. Which is a little bit also the idea of control. But we talked about this previously about locus of control, right? So part of that is how much you feel you have control over the situation, right? So your stressor might be something that you might have control over the situation, you might not, right? If you're going to a party, right, and you see your significant other kissing somebody, right? Now that could be pretty stressful, right? And the question is, how are you going to understand it? And is it predictable? Well, it's completely unpredictable. But you know what? I happen to know what's going on, because the only reason why she's doing that is because I made her upset. I can control that, right? I can decide I won't be that way, so et cetera, right? There are the questions: how much control do you have over that stressor? Can I get a good grade on the test? I know that if I study, I could get a good grade on the test. Okay, so that's the idea of control. Okay, cognitive appraisal: how you're going to think it's well. This is a catastrophe, but really it's a gift from God, right? It's an opportunity instead of a crisis. Predictability. Number 2, predictability. Can I say that's going to happen every week? This is going to happen, right? The train is going to be late at least 30% of the time. I'm going to be stuck on the platform at least 30% of the time. I knew this was going to happen. You know what? So I decided I was going to go out, leave home a half hour early because it's predictable. Control, even though I have no control over it, right? The number 3 is control, right? Number 4 is coping resources, okay? Sometimes the coping resources are going to make a big deal difference, right? I know it's going to be difficult. I know I'm going to be late. You know what? If it's late, I'll get out and I will take a cab. That I know I can take care of, okay? Or has social support, right? And number 5 is social support. So the stress mediators, we're talking about cognitive appraisal, how you think about it, how you're going to interpret it. 2, predictability. 3, control, how much control you have over the situation or perceived control, locus of control. 4, number 4 is the coping resources that you happen to have. I've got the strength to pull through this. I know I have it. It has a little bit to do with the self-efficacy, which we'll talk about, and the social support that you have. So those are the 5 mediators that can impinge upon your perception of the stresses, which can fall into the 4 categories, okay? Now, how do you respond? Okay, this will affect the way you respond, but what is the response? What type of responses can a person have to stress? Not everybody responds in the same way, right? There could be physical responses, right? Migraine, sweating, tension, different types of the fight and flight response, okay? The actions of the autonomic nervous system, which will make that happen. So these are physical responses, okay? Not everybody gets such strong physical responses. Some is pure psychological, closing off, confusion, dulling of the brain, right? Which in the psychological, we can talk to them into the context of the emotion or the cognitive or the behavioral types of reactions. So that you can be either physical or psychological, and within the psychological range, it can be emotional, cognitive, thinking funny, right? Defense mechanism, for instance, or behavioral. Okay, so over again, life changes. stressors, meteors, and stress responses.